Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Sit Down with Sid podcast. This is season 3, episode 8. Today, I have once again, by popular demand, all across North America and Canada, Michael Sall, the living legend of gin rummy. Hey, Michael, how are you?
All right. Yourself?
I'm doing good. Michael, I have to tell you one thing. Most of the podcasts that we have done together, for some reason, you get a lot of traction from, America itself as well as Canada. And the average view time for your podcast are pretty high compared to the other episodes that we have. So I have to say you are some celebrity down here, huh?
Well, that may be an overstatement, but what the hell? I'll take it.
No, thank you. I know you're busy, and it's always good to have you here. I enjoy our conversations, and so does our audience. Okay, there's a lot that has happened from the last time when we connected. So why don't we get right into it? The first topic I want to talk about is the Harris-Trump debate on September the 10th. Did you happen to watch the debate?
Yes.
Okay. I have a clip of 3 minutes, which is the top highlights of that debate, which I'm going to share with you and the audience. And then I'm going to follow up with that question, okay?
Okay.
Okay. All right. So let's see.
Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
Nice to see you. Have fun.
Thank you.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom.
People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan.
move.
Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black.
I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
You talk about extreme.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
One does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted?
She hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war.
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. So I think you've heard tonight 2 very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past.
She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it?
Okay, Michael. Now, wow. I mean, listen, I am voting for Trump. I've never said this publicly, but being in New York, I might get hate for this. I might lose business, but to heck with it. For me, this country, which has given me and identity and an opportunity to call it home is bigger than myself and any business. Now, my question to you is, you saw the whole thing. In your eyes, who was the winner and a better performer on September the 10th in this debate? Of the two?
Clearly, Vice President Harris she was better prepared. She, to the extent anyone swung votes, the Trump camp is claiming she didn't, but I can't help but believe that she swung more votes than him. I certainly don't think it was a knockout blow, but you have to understand, this is all theatrics. Not a word she said was true. She has no reservations about lying because she'll never be fact-checked. I don't mean to suggest Trump doesn't have a little embroidery on the tablecloth either, but he's kept in tow much more because not only do they fact-check, but they accuse him of lies that didn't happen. That little clip where you saw, just for the record, there are no states that allow infanticide or killing a child. He didn't say that. He said that there were governors who advocated that. He never said that. So that there was a law anywhere that permitted it, but the supposed fact checker, just put words in his mouth and then said it was wrong.
Okay. In my opinion, I think Trump started strong and then he faded away. Kamala started very nervous, but she finished strong. As you said,
Trump didn't appear to have prepared for it. There was so much he could have said or done. Every one of her lies, Charlottesville, any of that, he could have gone to the moderator and say, look, you know she's lying. I know she's lying. Why aren't you bringing it up? And it would have I think, been very effective because he'd have been nailing the press along with her. And of course, everyone loves when you nail the press.
Right. From what I know, Trump was interrupted 11 times during this whole debate, whereas Kamala Harris was interrupted 3 times. And now this thing is circulating in the media, the ABC whistleblower, that this debate was all scripted and the script was given to Harris in advance. Do you believe that propaganda and bullshit, or do you think there is some truth in that?
Anyone who would be surprised that she was given either the questions or the ideas that would be touched on, the whistleblower also claimed that she was able to dictate certain areas not be brought up. Anyone who would be surprised by that has not been following politics. I got a bridge for you in Brooklyn to buy.
Okay. And also the media has given Kamala Harris the victory, like a lot of other analysts and media pundits, and her polling has gone over the roof. It's hard. Do you trust the media? That's my question, Michael. You've seen it all. Do you think the media is legit and candid to the people?
Of course not. Look, there's always going to be a bias. We see the world through our own personal lens, and it is unavoidable. On the other hand, the media has gone way beyond any personal bias to where they are the 5th column. I think anyone who's followed politics knows that. They are the 5th column for the Democratic Party. Nothing they say can be believed. When you have the FBI has Hunter Biden's laptop for 2 years before the Post comes out and says, yes, the laptop is real. The information regarding Biden taking bribes, etc., is real. And yet you have a concerted effort by the new media, Facebook, Google, etc., along with the old media and government to keep that story to label it Russian disinformation, I mean, it was almost laughable. It is no different, this is a pretty strong statement, than Pravda in the old Soviet Union. Pravda manufactured news as they thought would benefit the state. And that's what we are doing here now. Luckily, at least, we do have the internet, we do have independent operators like yourself, and it's not as devastating as perhaps it was in the old Soviet Union.
So, Michael, is it fair to say, to your point, that America is turning away from democracy and going towards more communism?
Oh, without a doubt. Look, the cry of the socialists, it's always the same thing. The Hayek in The Road to Serfdom pointed this out. Every time they fail, and they do fail every time, their claim is, give us more power. The reason, if we only had more power, we could succeed. Of course, more power fails again, but meanwhile, you are in the grip of the state. They are controlling your actions. You know, Ayn Rand said when she testified before Congress that it would be impossible for anyone to understand what it is like or what it was like in a totalitarian state like the Soviet Union. She says people who enjoy freedom like we do could never understand that. And I mean, the young people live in the land of honey, which is what America is. And they think that the world has always been this way and will always be this way. And of course, nothing is further from the truth. That if we don't fight for it to keep it this way, it will turn into a totalitarian state. Think of this. Every law passed is, by definition, a restriction on your freedom. It's a law, so it's dictating something to you. Now, we have literally millions upon millions of laws on the books that are above and beyond what we had while America prospered. And you know, socialism and the accumulation of laws go hand in hand. And it's a very dangerous thing. Unfortunately, the children of today's America don't understand that.
Well, it is very scary, Michael, because I don't know if you saw day before yesterday in an interview with Hillary Clinton. She said that people should be arrested, similar to they are being arrested in UK, for spreading any kind of misinformation. I mean, just the thought of that is scary, you know? I mean, can you imagine?
Of course, it's insane. And the funny thing is, I'm old enough to know what the Democratic Party, which is today the Socialist Party, but I remember when the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, had Hillary made a statement like that, they would have had a news conference the next day condemning it. A whole variety of suggestions from Democratic senators and congressmen really curtail freedom of speech. And yet there's not a single word from the ACLU. They have now become an arm of the Democratic Party. It's like the women's movement. The women's movement is not a movement supporting women. It's a movement supporting socialism. The Anti-Defamation League, to a lesser extent, but I would charge them as well, they don't support the anti-Semitism so much as they support all things socialist.
Mhm.
And the NAACP, the same thing. These organizations have shifted from their stated purpose to supporting socialism. You know, there used to be a very strong element within the Democratic Party, Scoop Jackson, John F. Kennedy, that were very much American freedom. They understood what civil liberties were all about, but if they exist there today, they're silent. They're afraid to speak out. And they're leading us to the road to serfdom. That's where we're headed.
This is disturbing. You know why? Because America, I mean, I came from India here, is known as land of the free and home of the brave, right? All across the world, I have people also reaching out to us that they think that we are very lucky that we have freedom of speech. We have these rights that they don't in their country. But I still don't understand why even a Democratic Party would want to change the whole stature of this country, the foundation of this country that it was built upon, what it meant. I mean, this is beyond disturbing to me. And my question to you is, Michael, do you believe in capitalism? Because
capitalism has proven repeatedly, without exception, to lead to prosperity, both materially, spiritually, environmentally. I mean, that doesn't mean that there aren't multiple problems in a capitalist society. Of course there are. The thing is that capitalism works towards solving them, whereas socialism actually continuously makes them worse under the banner of trying to improve them.
Michael, I have a couple of questions on the debate before we move from that topic. There were two things that struck me on the debate. Number one, we'll start with Kamala Harris. She said she met Zelensky not one, not two, not three, 5 times, and she has never met Putin. Do you see something wrong in that statement of hers? Because she has gotten some backlash from the right wing on that statement specifically.
I don't know if it's true or not. Meeting them and having an influence or two different things, even if she met him, but I would have no idea. She's basically, in fairness to her as vice president, she had little authority. She did on the border, which she failed miserably, but on something like the Ukraine war, her job is basically to provide cover for whatever the president's policy is. So whether she met him or not, it's almost of zero importance. Whereas the borders say where she was charged with handling it. And of course, somewhere between 12 and 18 million illegal immigrants have come in. That is her failure.
And then on the other side, Trump bringing up illegal Haitian immigrants eating dogs and cats in Springfield, Ohio, he got a lot of rebuttal even from his own party for that. Do you think that was too amateurish for him to bring on a presidential debate?
Well, even talking about that, all right, it's as if you're going to buy a $100,000 car and there's some dirt on the tire, and you're focused on whether you should buy the car or not because there's a little bit of dirt on the tire. You're buying a $100,000 car. I doubt that little dirt should influence your judgment, whether Trump was right or wrong. And certainly the mayor has disclaimed it, so let's assume he was wrong, is of no importance anyway. I mean, who cares? I thought Trump was foolish for bringing it up. I think
Yeah.
the press is foolish for focusing on it. But in a gotcha society, if they can catch him making a misstatement, of course, they're going to focus on it.
I totally agree. I want to move on from this topic, Michael. I want to bring up, before we get into the nitty gritty of the policies, their campaign strategy, and the polls, which I know you're very critical about and have a lot of input on those topics. What do you think about the 2 assassination attempts on former President Donald Trump in a span of just 8 weeks, July 13th and a couple of days ago in Mar-a-Lago?
I think, look, it certainly, you can't blame, I don't blame any individual's rhetoric for this. These are unhinged, wackos. And, Joe Biden calling someone a Nazi. I mean, Trump has called Kamala a Nazi. To me, has no bearing. What I do find disturbing is that after this most recent one, much of the mainstream press coverage has basically romanticized this guy. In other words, if they wanted to call him crazy, fine. If they want to call him evil, fine. But to talk about him as if he's some soldier of fortune, that's just disgusting.
I mean, I think the political rhetoric by both parties is very dangerous, and you're right. They need to tone it down, because yesterday he was in Long Island, Union Day in Long Island here, and they had this hoax in the morning which I also sent you, that they found a third bomb. They found a bomb, a third attempt to assassinate him, which apparently was verified by the Long Island PD police department that it was not true. But I don't know. I have a funny feeling. Do you think there can be some twists in the next 51 days till the election? I don't know.
Well, they're almost, I mean, copycat crimes are a common phenomenon. So, but I mean, let me explain. I'll tell you a quick story. I was at a seminar that was raising money for Christians in the Middle East who were under siege. Not just Jews are under siege there, but Christians. So a rabbi gets up and he speaks and he says, we can't forget the rhetoric of, I mean, obviously there's rhetoric on the left that's anti-Semitic, but you have the extreme right-wing people on the right, and anti-Semitism goes across the political spectrum. And I wanted to say something, but I was quiet. The rabbi made the mistake of, after he got down off the stage, he walked up to me, he said, "What do you think?" And that was a tragic error. I said, "Everything you said was bullshit." He says, "Wow. What do you mean?" I said, "Well, first of all, numerically, the number of anti-Semites on the extreme right are dwarfed by the number of anti-Semites, not just on the extreme left, but into the mainstream left." I said, "But that's not even the worst part. The worst part is the anti-Semites on the right are roundly rejected. There's not one Republican who does not totally reject them. Yet the anti-Semites on the left are tolerated and often embraced. And so, yes, they exist on the right, but please don't compare them as if there's a moral equivalence." And here you have something similar. You have assassins who are dealt with not like heroes. I don't want to suggest that, but they're not dealt with the harshness that those acts deserve. And that is coming entirely from the left.
It's so funny how the left continues to fool regular people, and they continue to buy into their fake propaganda and nonsense information. Michael, I want to talk about the policies. I have few topics here that I want to cover with you. So I want your stance on who do you think is a better candidate to be the 47th president of the United States between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump.
Well,
let's talk about
Trump. I mean, I'm a free market, and that makes me a Republican automatically. I mean, John F. Kennedy was free market. If you took it, he could not be a member of the Democratic Party today any more than Scoot Jackson, who got hundreds of thousands of Jews safely out of the Soviet Union. Kennedy spoke repeatedly about tax cuts and a rising tide lifts all ships. He understood what the Democrats mock today. They put trickle-down economics. But the reality is that when the economy is strong, everyone benefits.
Correct.
So I clearly am on the side of the Republicans.
So that's great you brought it up. I want to talk about economy since you brought it up. I mean, you have seen the prices of commodities have gone over the roof. Inflation is over the roof. Trump has said that he will end inflation and make America affordable again, whereas Harris said that she would try to reduce the cost of the food and housing for working families, because it is very hard to afford a house right now. Forget to buy it, I mean, afford it as well. How much truth do you see in those statements? And I mean, you have clearly said that Trump is a better candidate for it, which I agree, but I want you to explain to our audience how you think Trump can do better on economy versus Harris. It's
pretty simple. Harris's suggestions have failed: price controls, subsidies, etc. They have failed no exception, every time they've been tried. However, they have popular appeal. For people who don't understand economics, the idea of, well, yeah, if the government limits the price a vendor can charge for something, then boy, that would be good for me. No, it's not good for you. It'll lead to a shortage of the product will no longer be produced if they put a limit on it. And it has never, ever, ever succeeded in any country. But it sounds good, so they're willing to adopt it. Trump, on the other hand, is going to move towards a freer economy, lower taxes, and that is proven repeatedly without exception to work. Every time we lowered taxes in the United States, there was more revenue to the government and the economy began expanding at a more rapid rate. Okay, but Trump's claim of controlling inflation, well, if he expands the economy, that is a natural consequence of it.
But Michael, let me ask you now, isn't it a question of demand and supply? That's what we call equilibrium, right? Economy is, if there is a demand, if the demand and supply are in equilibrium, the economy is stable and sustainable, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. So my thing is, we are at $36 trillion debt, right? We went from 20 trillion to 26 trillion when Trump was in presidency in 4 years. We went from 26 trillion to 36 trillion in not even 4 years, the full term in Harris and Biden's presidency, So how can they end inflation if the debt of the country, the national debt, continues to implode, whatever,
Well, all right. I think there's a little understood component to inflation. Now, I make no claim to understand it thoroughly. When you have literally tens of thousands of variables affecting it, I cannot put together a predictive model of what where inflation will be tomorrow. What I can do, just from observing the history of inflation, is tell you certain forces that do affect it. And it is my firm belief that I categorize inflation in two ways: nominal inflation and real inflation. So let's suppose that the price you can buy 2 apples for $1. And let's suppose over a year's time, inflation cut your buying power in half. So if that were the only event, you could only buy 1 apple for $1.
Correct.
But let's also suppose during that year, people learned to produce apples at half the price. So had there been no inflation, you could buy 4 apples for $1.
Correct.
But because of the inflation, you can still only buy 2 apples for $1. That means that the benefit of the productivity in producing apples was lost on the currency devaluation. It is my belief that year after year, when we measure inflation at 2 or 3%, that's nominal inflation. That's how much you pay for that apple last year versus this year.
Correct.
But real inflation is that 2% plus the productivity that the inflation ate up and essentially wasted. We are going through economic times now where productivity, not as it's measured by the government, but in a realistic sense, is skyrocketing to where no one can measure. So when they tell us that we have 2 or 3% inflation, that could be 10%. It could be 12%. Nobody knows. But the advances, because of the information age, the digital revolution, are incomprehensible. It's almost impossible to get your mind around. 99% of the scientists that lived in the history of the world are living today. That information 20 years ago was doubling every 10 years. So in a 10-year period, you had more information available than you had in the entire history of mankind. And I would argue today that's probably down to every 5 years. The ability to access information. Anyone who hasn't used AI is missing one of the great, most phenomenal transitions in the history of man. Google search is like a horse and buggy compared to AI, which is like a new Ferrari. You can ask it a question. It's in 10 seconds, it'll scan the entire internet, synthesize everything relevant to what you have asked, and give you a short, concise answer to your question. So you have the entire accumulation of information on the internet available at your fingertips in a matter of seconds to scan, review, and synthesize. It just, I mean, I don't know.
Michael, do you mind if I give you a pushback on that?
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then why, okay, if AI provides all this information in a mere seconds, then the people who are working behind the search algorithms, the search engines, don't you think if everyone transforms towards the AI, the market, there will be depression, not even inflation, because people will be out of jobs. When you're out of job, what happens? People go in bankruptcy, people go in foreclosures. Don't you think that is actually, that's just my 2 cents, that is more dangerous to the economic?
Has been a concern with every advance of humankind. The very same concern. It goes back hundreds of years with every new development. And you can see but it has never proved to be true. Every single time it has proved a false alarm. What you do see, for example, is in the United States, we have transitioned towards a service economy. Why? Because of these advances. We're on the cutting edge worldwide of these technological advances. You take China, which till Mao died in around 72 or 1974, they have gone from an agrarian society to a manufacturing society. We went from agrarian to manufacturing in the early 20th century, late 19th century. They did it, and they started that transition in 72. In 30 years ago, we began transitioning from a manufacturing society to an information society, and no country has begun to catch up with this. So I'm not smart enough to tell you where the jobs will be, but I'm telling you that they said the same thing when we changed from agrarian to manufacturing. They said the same thing, manufacturing to information, but it just has never happened.
Okay, that's fair. Well enough. What do you think about the stance on abortion? From what I can tell, I think Harris clearly won the debate on abortion. Although I do agree with Trump's policy on it, is where he wants to pass it on to the states, and the federal government can only veto it, but does not have control. Versus Harris.
It's not that he wants to constitutionally. That is the demand. The Roe versus Wade decision was a contortion, a legal contortion that really, having stretched and twisted so many ways to come to the conclusion they wanted, they had half the country, or 40% of it, saying bullshit. The Constitution clearly says that the powers not enumerated in it are left to the state. There's no reference to abortion or murder or those sorts of things. Those are state laws. And that's what the Supreme Court with Roe versus Wade should have said. Had they said it, the whole issue would be settled today. But just like Brown versus Board of Education, separate but equal, they claimed that it was okay to racially segregate schools as long as they were of the same quality. Well, that was a bad decision. And so was Roe versus Wade, and what Trump referred to, which he got corrected on, but he was right. Granted, not every left-leaning liberal scholar agreed it was a bad decision, but many did. So even those who support abortion among legal scholars, a good percentage of them said this was wrongly decided.
My main concern with that is Trump. So there was a poll where Trump had 13% on the male in terms of voting, the poll numbers, whereas Harris has, I think, 14% plus. That's why they have a difference of a couple of points. But Harris has more female voters support, whereas Trump has more male support in terms of voting. Well, my question to you is, he does need women votes to win the election. I mean, abortion is one of the main topic of discussion for an election, which is very hard to fathom to begin with. But since it is, don't you find that concerning? I mean, he needs those votes.
Well, I do. I would argue that probably Trump's brash nature, his queen's, personality is more, turns women off more than the abortion issue. There's an irony here. that Roe versus Wade actually inured to the benefit, the Supreme Court decision throwing it out was better for Democrats than Republicans. That sounds strange, but politically I'm talking about. Prior to that, women or people who were passionate about this issue, let's suppose, for argument's sake, 60% supported choice, 40% life. Of the 40%, a large number of them would never vote for a choice candidate, whereas among the 60%, almost all of them would vote for a life candidate because they thought that the abortion issue was secure. Now, so even though there were fewer life voters, politically, the issue inured to the Republicans' benefit. Now, with Roe versus Wade upset and the confusion around it, those 60% now, many more of them are voting on that issue. And so the Democrats have gained votes as a result.
Interesting. I actually never saw it that way. Thanks for sharing. What do you think about immigration? I mean, the border crisis. Once again, the things that we're discussing right now, economy, abortion, immigration, these are the main key components of this election. Whosoever has a better stance has better chances of winning the election. Immigration, right? Illegal immigrants coming in, committing crime, raping women. I mean, what is all this nonsense? I mean, Kamala Harris is supposed to be the border czar.
Well, it's far worse than what we're seeing. You can bet your life that there will be terrorist acts that occurred, that will occur, that are being planned now by people coming in. They're coming in from all over the world. The border's open. So you will see intelligence agents who are become embedded in American society, sharing sensitive information with our enemies, all as a result of this. And then you will see the biggest, broadest effect among blue-collar workers. You will see lower wages and more difficulty in getting jobs because you now have somewhere between 12 and 18 million more people who are after those blue-collar jobs. So what's going to happen? Prices for them are going to go down and competition for them is going to go up.
That's true. I mean, we can also talk about, one more topic on this is the taxes. Harris wants to raise corporate taxes and on taxes on Americans making $400,000 and above, whereas Trump proposes a number of tax cuts through higher growth and tariff on imports. Now, what do you think is the right way to go about it? Raising corporate taxes and taking more taxes, people with high net value worth, or do you agree Trump's policy on raising more tariffs on imports?
Well, the tariffs, if they were used selectively, I'd agree. I don't agree across the board, but I do agree selectively. Insofar as corporate taxes, it's funny how the Democrats point to the fact that an across-the-board tariff would add to prices, and overall it would. I'm not sure how much, but definitely would. But what they fail to recognize is that corporate taxes are paid by the consumer in a much more direct way than tariffs would be. And the reason is that if I'm a supermarket chain, and let's say supermarket chains, in order to exist profitably, have to earn, say, 1.5%. Their margins are tiny. Well, the reason I'm only earning 1.5% is there's plenty of places to buy food. If I don't keep my prices competitive, I'll be out of business. Well, what happens when they lower the corporate tax? Well, now I can charge less for food, and competition in the very beginning, sure, I'll make a little more money, but in a very short time, competition is going to force everyone to lower their prices. Correct. Meaning, as a consumer, you will enjoy cheaper prices. So the reality is consumers pay the corporate tax, not the corporation. And if I had my way, I'd eliminate all corporate taxes. Why, you know, if you want a national sales tax, then say so. I don't, but at least be upfront. A corporate tax is tantamount to a national sales tax.
So you completely oppose the corporate tax agenda?
Of course, and lowering it, I mean, politically, getting rid of it would probably be a non-starter. But lowering it's possible, and that's what Trump is proposing. Look, Trump lowered corporate taxes. What happened? Real wages, meaning inflation-adjusted wages, for the first time in 30 years went up. People could buy more with the same amount of money.
True.
And just to give you an illustration of the deceit in this issue of 400,000. So Biden ran 4 years ago saying his tax increases would not affect anyone with earning less than 400,000. Kamala is saying the same thing now. Yes. But now the guy making 400,000 4 years ago, who's still at 400,000, but that only buys what 300,000 was buying 4 years ago because of inflation. So what happened? They're really taxing people at 300,000. And worse yet, the pool of money available to government for high-income earners is so small they can never implement their agenda. That's the political claim. But 100% of the time, the real money is in the middle class, the people earning less.
Exactly.
And they are the people who ultimately get targeted.
Right. Michael, I have a question. What do you think about the stance of Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Bill Ackman, now all supporting Trump and officially endorsing Trump? There was another billionaire yesterday. He has $2.1 billion invested in the stock market. And he said, this was on MSN News, that he will pull out all the money from the stock market if Harris wins. So what do you think of this top 1% earners are switching all their votes towards Trump and not even supporting Harris' agenda?
Well, my only question is what took them so long? In other words, they've been supporting leftist organizations for decades. Peter Thiel's an exception, but at Musk himself, you know, who I think has finally seen the light. I mean, Ackman is just ridiculous. He was giving money to Harvard while Harvard had the same anti-Semitic policies that you saw after October 7th. You know, there was nothing new there. And yet he became outraged after October 7th, but he was part of the problem, not the solution. Look, I can't explain it. I had a theory that guys like Warren Buffett, Bill Gates is born to a radical liberal family, and you have to dismiss him. But why would Buffett back so many Democrats? And, you know, one thing, and I don't fault him for this, Buffett is out for Buffett. All right? Nothing wrong with that. Michael's out for Michael. But he may see it in his interest that he knows the Republicans because philosophically they would never come after his wealth or his power that his wealth gives to him. Whereas the Democrats potentially could. So by embracing the Democrats, he feels like they will eat him last. They'll eat everyone else in the room before they go after him. And there may be, that's a theory. Who knows if it's true?
What do you think about Taylor Swift endorsing Kamala Harris? She made out a very strong statement, and most of her 283 million followers, if that number is correct, somewhat around that number, they are mostly Gen Zs,
Well, she's naive, obviously, politically, and God will forgive her. Yeah.
Well, do you say this?
She does.
Do you say the same for Oprah Winfrey?
Silliness.
Oprah Winfrey also came out and
look, I used to try to figure out why certain people, Oprah, Taylor Swift, but not just celebrities, why they were so
George Clooney
attracted to this destructive force called socialism. And I don't know. I tended to believe it's their worldview. They just see the world through a lens where life is a zero-sum game. If Sid makes $1, somebody out in the universe loses $1, as opposed to a capitalist who says, well, if Sid makes $1, that was $1 in wealth created.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't taken from someone, it was created. And, I'll tell you this, though, Sid. It's best not to discuss motives, because when you discuss motives, you detract from the issue at hand. Capitalism or socialism. Let's talk about that. But why somebody adopts socialism takes you away from really what you're trying to understand. And you could easily be right about the capitalism, but wrong about the motives. So, leave motives to God. Let us just deal with what occurs.
The only thing I find wrong about people like Buffett, Gates, Swift, Oprah Winfrey, these are powerful people with a lot of influence. These are powerful influencers. They have masses of audiences that are influenced by anything and everything that they say. So my problem is the influence part. I don't care who, as you said, we should not get distracted, why they are doing this. But don't you think that's a problem in itself? The kind of power that they hold being so influential?
Well, yeah, not everything works in the way we would like it. But the alternative in trying to perhaps curb that power is far more dangerous than whatever misbegotten ideas they propagate. The alternative would be to have somebody sitting there screening ideas, the minister of ideas. And I think that's way, way more dangerous. Let them speak, and it'll result in some undesirable endings, but not letting them speak will result in many, many more undesirable ones.
One more question I have for you on this, and this is important. I really need to know your viewpoint. What do you think of Elon Musk, the most powerful, influential guy with almost 200 million followers on X, probably the number one enemy of all these people that we mentioned, including Hillary Clinton, who said that he's pathetic after his childless cat lady comment to Taylor Swift? I think he's a great person. I think even some of my friends, they hate him, and we always get into debate. I'm like, what's your beef with him? I said, would you prefer to live in a communist country, or will you prefer to live in a capitalist country with your freedom of speech. And they just don't get it. I really want to know, what do you think about Elon Musk?
Musk
Do you
is
think
great.
Mhm.
I really believe that even when he was on the dark side, supporting Democrats, I did wonder a little why he was so naive. But I read Isaacson's book on his life, and
Mhm.
I mean, his accomplishments obviously speak for themselves, but I've written and given a lot of thought to what makes someone successful.
Mhm.
And Musk combines every one of the elements needed,
Mhm.
but in a super superlative way. He's highly intelligent. He has a wealth of common sense.
Mhm.
He is not tethered to the past or past thinking. He questions every assumption. There are no assumptions that he blindly accepts.
Mhm.
He's a workaholic beyond belief. Everyone criticizes him, for example, that he always sets target goals that, if not impossible, are near impossible. But the reality is, I promise you, he gets jobs done a lot faster because of that. His technique is just, I find, so far superior to people who think in a conventional way. And his results speak for themselves. I mean, how can you deny the accomplishments that he's achieved?
I totally agree. I want to move on and talk about the polls, and I'm going to share this with you real quick and our audience. So these are the national polling averages, where, as you can see, Harris is at 49% to Trump 47. And I brought this chart up because I also want to tie in the swing states, the 7 swing states, which are Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. As you can see, Arizona, Trump is losing. North Carolina, Harris is up. Nevada, almost tied in. Georgia, Trump is up, which is interesting because uh, for those of people who don't know, a third of Georgia's population is African American, which is one of the country's largest proportion of black residents. So, which is great, which means he has more black votes here. Wisconsin, Harris is up. Pennsylvania is a very important state where Harris is up, and I really don't believe this number. Same goes with Michigan. But look at the gap in Minnesota and Virginia. I mean, so my question to you is, I'm going to stop sharing this screen. Now I share this with you. Why do you think, of the 50 states, the 7 swing states that I mentioned, holds the key to the White House and who the next president would be of United States?
Well, I don't know. I know that, the reliability of polls has declined considerably. Trump was supposed to lose in 22. There was supposed to be a red wave that never occurred.
Yes.
You've seen it in past elections. Reagan was sort of tied in 1980 with Carter, and then won 49 states or 46 states, something like that.
Yeah, Reagan, yeah.
So the reliability is not there. I don't claim any greater insight. However, no doubt Harris could win. I didn't think Biden had any chance.
Right.
I really was convinced of that. But she's a fresh face, and obviously with this polling, it's possible she could win. By the way, it wouldn't shock me if Trump won in a landslide either. I mean,
well, it's funny you brought it up, because today on MSN, the news was the analysts who predicted the 2020 elections, where Biden won, predicts a landslide victory for Kamala Harris. This is the news I just saw before we got on this podcast.
Well, Biden was favored to win. in 2020, so that's hardly news. If he had predicted Trump in 2016, that would have been news. He was a 3, 4, 5 to 1 underdog. But you're going to see that kind of thing for the next month and a half until the election, and obviously you're going to see it on both sides, and somebody's going to be right, and that'll give them bragging rights in the next election.
I mean, you have seen it all. Do you think these polling numbers, the national average, are these accurate indicators of who will win? I mean, give me some of your experience.
Well, how can they be? First of all, even within their own claims, they're within the margin of error. And where you have 7 swing states that are going to determine it. I mean, Virginia, the Trump stand in Virginia should be no surprise. In the same way, Florida and Ohio 12 years ago were called swing states. Virginia was a swing state. They are solid Republican now. Virginia may have been a swing state 20 years ago, but it's solid Democratic now.
Wow. What a change.
Well, just think about it. All the people that work in government live in Virginia, half of them.
That
work in Washington. So that's a pretty good starting point for the Democrats.
Very interesting. I want to talk about the campaigning. I know you have been very critical of the campaigning strategies by Trump and Harris, and especially Trump. He was at Uniondale, Long Island yesterday, September the 18th. And Harris spoke in Washington as well on the 18th. Now she plans to go to Michigan and Wisconsin as well. I know you brought this up even off the record. You think that the campaign strategy adopted by Trump is somewhat not right? Can you elaborate?
I think he's leaving massive amounts of votes on the table. I know through my son-in-law, and who's head of sales for the Shade Room, and others, that the Black, Hispanic, the minority communities who have traditionally voted Democratic are ripe for a change. First of all, a lot have already, in polling shows, moved over to the Republicans. But there's a lot who are still on the fence, who, if Trump directed his efforts there, would swing large number of votes. I mean, remember, every Democrat vote that you get to come over, it counts for 2 votes, one less for them, one more for you. If you get a Republican who didn't vote last cycle to vote, that's 1 vote. And his emphasis, and I don't mean to play this down, you need to energize your base. If you don't get Republicans out there in big numbers, you can't win. So his effort in that direction is fine, but he's ignoring the minority community. If I were his campaign manager, he would be in Strawberry Mansion, that's a ghetto in Philadelphia. He would be in a ghetto area in Pittsburgh. He would be in Detroit, in a ghetto area. And that's where he would be holding rallies, not in an all-white Flint, Michigan. Because at those locales, he can actually steal votes from the Democrat, and I believe he can do it in large numbers. The whole key is persuadable voters. The reason the debate will not have a meaningful effect on the election is that 99% of the people who bothered to watch it are not persuadable. Their minds made up. But you do have persuadable voters in these minority communities, Hispanic, Black, and to not focus on that, I think, is criminal negligence.
What do you think he should do? Okay, let me put it this way. Hypothetically, if you were him running for an office, what would be your strategy for the next 7 weeks?
swing states, particularly minority voters.
Okay. I also want to share, I don't know if we missed anything. I do have a question, actually. Do you support, and it's up to you if you want to answer this, do you support U.S., do you agree with the U.S. support of Ukraine in the Ukraine-Russia war and Israel supporting Israel and just not ending these wars? Like, I really, it's up to you if you feel comfortable answering this question.
I don't share either viewpoint. I don't have either enough data or maybe it's too difficult a choice, but I don't have any opinion on that. I could be persuaded either way. You know, we shouldn't be there or we should be supporting them wholeheartedly. On Israel, however, I am clear. Israel, if we want freedom at home, if we want peace in the world, supporting Israel is and in an unqualified way, is our only choice. Okay. I mean, first of all, Israel is like unto us, all right? But just in a more practical sense, the support we give to the Israeli military buys us intelligence that 50 times that amount of money could never buy us if we tried to do it without them. The ethical component that these people, if 𝐃𝐸𝐬 Meir said properly, if the Arabs laid down their arms, there would be peace in the Middle East. If the Israelis laid down their arms, they would be killed. And I mean, the Arab perspective is drive them into the sea, kill them, get rid of them. They have no more interest in peace. They never did and they don't now. So, but from a more practical sense, Israel is like an efficient military outpost of the United States. So for those of you who might not be persuaded by the ethical argument, certainly I would hope you would be by the pragmatic one.
What do you think about, last question before we wrap this up, is what do you think about the ongoing failure in the Secret Service that's going on? Firing of Kim Cheetle, now Ronald Rowe, who is the acting director, he's under fire again for the second assassination attempt a couple of days ago. Do you think the Secret Service is fully equipped to protect these people?
Well, it suffers from the same cancer that all bureaucracies suffer from. The further removed from the ground you get the decision making, the more inefficient, the poorer it will be. So since the American government is the largest bureaucracy in the world, it is the most inefficient as well. And what you've seen recently in the Secret Service is just a reflection in that. You have the Home Office making calls that only the people on the ground are qualified to make. But that is, every bureaucracy suffers from that.
Michael, I also want to tell our audience, so you have been, right now you are, I want to share this with our audience as well. I would encourage them to go and follow you. Guys, Michael is actually available on Stack. This is michaelsall.scck.me. Michael has been writing a lot of articles. He has his own blog, which we will also post in the description of the video. But this is something new where, Michael has been posting, this is the recent one that Michael posted on Donald Trump. And we will encourage people to follow you on Stack. And Michael, we will continue to put more articles here. So we can build some more, fan base here. You also wrote Jim Rummy, A Predator's Guide. So if people still want to buy that book, they can email you at mikesall@yahoo.com. And we will also put that in the description of this video as well. Anything else, Michael, you thought we missed on or we did not cover?
Oh, there's a universe, but we'll get to it another time.
Okay. All right. Michael, this was, as always, it's always a pleasure to have you on. Always a pleasure to chat with you. I really enjoy our conversation.
My pleasure, Sid.
And yeah, you take care of yourself and looking forward to seeing you again. Okay?
We'll talk again soon.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye.